Council President Andrew Friedson. We're here with the County Council in Takoma Park. This is part of our commitment to bring the council to the community, especially when we are addressing land use and policy decisions that have the most impact in communities. So we are here in the community that is impacted. This is a public hearing on the Takoma Park Minor Master Plan Amendment. A Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee work session is scheduled for January 29th, 2024. Those wishing to submit testimony for the council's consideration should do so by the end of the day today. As a reminder, those interested are welcome to continue submitting correspondence on this topic until the council approves the plan. Our first speaker we'll call up is Mayor Circe, and we'll also call up Chair Artie Harris. Mayor Circe, you have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Wonderful. Well, my name is Talisha Circe. I'm the mayor of the city of Takoma Park. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of our residents regarding the Minor Master Plan Amendment. I want to thank the Montgomery County Planning Board and staff who worked on this plan. The city of Takoma Park's housing and economic development goals are threefold: protect, preserve, and produce. We want to preserve existing businesses and affordable housing in Takoma Park, including in revitalizing areas. Produce more housing and opportunities for businesses to start and grow, allowing the city to meet our diverse housing and economic needs, and protect renters, homeowners, and local businesses from discrimination and displacement, and our environment from destruction. With the unexpected relocation of the Washington Advances Hospital, the Minor Master Plan Amendment opens the door for our community to realize what is needed to advance its housing and economic development goals, as well as support the advancement of our vital city resources such as affordable housing stock, schools, and municipal buildings. I am pleased that the Montgomery County Planning Board took the city's recommendations, and the plan now better reflects the city's values, including incentivizing the creation of a range of housing types, retaining and improving existing affordable housing, and protecting the most vulnerable among us from potential displacement due to development. However, now is where the real work begins, and we need Montgomery County Council to take 4 actions to ensure that the vision outlined in this plan is realized. First, references to modifying the city's rent stabilization law should be removed from the plan. The city of Takoma Park contains 4% of the county housing stock, but we make up 9% of the county's affordable housing. It is vital that we protect affordable housing in the city. In light of the county's new rent stabilization law, the Montgomery County Planning Board used the Minor Master Plan as an opportunity to opine on the city's rent stabilization law. The board should not use such plans to comment on municipal laws, and I urge the county council to remove this language from the plan. Second, the county council should require Montgomery County Public Schools MCPS superintendent to review the plan and amend the 2025-2030 MCPS CIP to fund Piney Branch Elementary construction. Piney Branch Elementary School was built in 1973 and has not been revitalized nor received a major capital project. Piney Branch is also the smallest school site in the entire county at 1.9 acres with no room for temporary class space in its current configuration. MCPS acknowledged in previous CIPs that the school has current and projected overutilization and needs comprehensive facility upgrade to address its aging infrastructure. Moreover, planning for capital improvements for the school began in 2017. However, the current CIP noted that construction is delayed until the Minor Master Plan is finalized. Since my November testimony before the Board of Education on this matter, the city has learned that MCPS did not provide formal comments on the Minor Master Plan. Additionally, they were under the impression that the plan would provide opportunities for identification of alternative space for the school. Meanwhile, the planning board did not appear to be aware of any of this and was expecting formal comments from MCPS. In the end, our students continue to suffer. Please act now to add funds to the CIP for the Piney Branch Elementary School construction. Also consider modifying the process to ensure that MCPS provides formal comments on master plans in the future. Third, the county council should review the plan using a race, equity, and social justice lens. The city recognizes the planning board is required to consider race, equity, and social justice impacts of the minor master plans they review. However, the city was under the impression that an additional equity review by the county's Office of Legislative Oversight was going to happen. We have since been told that this review is required for zoning text amendments to implement the approved plan, but not the plan itself. The City Council wants to encourage the County Council to review this plan using a race, equity, and social justice lens. Lastly, the County Council should work with the County Executive to ensure county funding is available to support the proposed infrastructure improvements recommended in the plan. The plan includes many wonderful additions to the community, including new public spaces and bike lanes. However, the city needs financial support from the county to create this infrastructure, which will benefit all of the county residents. The City of Takoma Park supports re-envisioning the Washington Advances Hospital campus and the enhancement of critical civic, economic, and housing resources in the surrounding neighborhoods along Maple Avenue corridor. The plan is a vital step towards realizing this shared goal, and we look forward to working with the county to ensure that the vision is realized. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Our next speaker, Chair Harris.
Good evening, Council President Friedson, Vice President Stewart, and members of the Council, and my neighbors. My name is Artie Harris, and I'm Chair of the Planning Board of Montgomery County. I'm excited to be here this evening to testify on the Planning Board draft of the Takoma Park Minor Master Plan Amendment. This plan represents outstanding collaboration and extensive input from the community, city representatives, and vested stakeholders. Equity in planning is a core tenet of our process, and we are proud of this plan, that this plan reflects this. The Planning Board had extensive conversations and took into consideration the racial equity and social justice impacts when reviewing the plan, although I understand there might be some confusion around additional analysis. The Planning Department will be prepared to talk about this more at the work session on Monday. The community told us what it continues to love about Takoma Park, while also expressing what would make their neighborhoods even more vibrant, affordable, environmentally resilient. I'm excited for the future of Takoma Park that blends this historic charm with modern takes on housing, transportation, and community facilities, as well as parks and open space. The plan is a comprehensive set of recommended actions for future growth in the section of a city covering roughly 132 acres. This plan is a true partnership between Montgomery Planning and the City of Takoma Park starting from 2018 and thinking about the future of the Washington Adventist Hospital campus. I am especially proud how even during a pandemic, city and planning staff engaged with the community and each other throughout the process, combining traditional and non-traditional methods to speak with more than 500 stakeholders over the course of the planning effort. I want to thank the team at the Planning Department, City of Takoma Park, and the community at large for their investment in this plan. The plan envisions a reimagined community with new affordable housing alongside upgraded existing housing with new and enhanced public spaces and parks, improved access to community-oriented public facilities, shops, and restaurants. 2, a reconnected community with a multifaceted pedestrian green promenade with wide shaded sidewalks, street trees, improved stormwater management, and places for residents to gather, plus enhanced bikeways, building on existing excellent transit access to the larger community and beyond. And lastly, a resilient community with new tools to respond to and mitigate the impacts of climate change, building on the city's commitment to environmental stewardship and ensuring that any new development retains and enhances the natural environment in the planned area and beyond. The Planning Board draft is a testament to the work of the Montgomery County Planning Department and the dedication of the City of Takoma Park and its residents to building a reimagined, reconnected, resilient future. On behalf of the Planning Board, I encourage the Council members to approve the Planning Board draft of the Takoma Park Minor Master Plan Amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before you get up, Councilmember Glass has a brief question.
Thank you, President Friedson. Mayor Circe, I just have a quick question for you. You spoke about the plan from your perspective. Can you share with us what the City Council's perspective is?
Sure. So the City Council undertook a number of different actions and voted 6-1 in favor of the plan with amendments. We've since learned in working with the Planning Board staff that many of the recommendations that we made in our resolution that was voted to proceed to you all 6-1 have been accepted, except for the mention of the rent stabilization law in the plan. Sure.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks to this panel. We appreciate it. We're going to call up our next panel. Our next panel is Ashley Bookshire, Sue Miller, Bob Dreher, and Wayne Sherwood. Ashley Brookshire, when you're ready. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Brookshire, and I live on Carroll Avenue, just over the bridge from the plan area. I'm very excited about the vision for the future of Takoma Park offered by the Minor Master Plan Amendment, and I hope the council will vote to support it in full. Although I'm speaking on my own behalf tonight, I helped to draft and signed a letter of support written by Takoma for All, a group of Maryland and DC neighbors supporting a sustainable, transit-oriented community with plenty of homes. My points tonight will perhaps unsurprisingly mirror those in that letter, which was signed by over 100 neighbors. As the council knows, our region is experiencing a severe housing crisis. Takoma Park has made no contributions to solve that crisis, as no new multifamily units have been built in our city since the 1970s. It is far past time for the city to do our part. These zoning updates proposed in the MMPA will make building plenty of new homes possible, while giving property owners the flexibility they need to balance housing with commercial interests. The council should not reduce any building heights or take any other action that would reduce the possible number of housing units on the site. The MMPA is a significant test of the concepts laid out in Thrive 2050, and I think it passes that test with flying colors. It also supports the Takoma Park City Council's own priorities of community belonging, fiscal and environmental sustainability, and community development for equitable quality of life. Zoning on the Adventist site is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and we cannot mess it up by thinking small or caving to a small but unrepresentative and ultimately selfish voices that often dominate the community. I love living in Takoma Park, and I want as many people as possible to join me and have the same opportunities that my family and I have here. I'm really excited about the potential new businesses that the mixed-use zoning would permit in my neighborhood. I look forward to walking to them and spending lots of money at those businesses in the plan area. I'm excited about all the new homes that are going to be made possible by this plan, adding more neighbors who are going to become my son's future classmates, local business owners, city and county employees, and hopefully some new friends. I'm also excited for the green promenade that is proposed. I think it's going to be a beautiful, sustainable space that will connect our whole community. In fact, I think the entire plan draft is going to promote the sustainable connection of different areas of our city, and I urge the council to resist any calls to freeze our city in amber. In order to live the Takoma Park values of inclusivity, sustainability, and diversity, we have to allow change. And in this case, that means advancing this plan as written. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sue Miller.
I'm Sue Miller on behalf of Community Vision for Takoma, a grassroots group of over 1,000 residents. We support the development of multifamily housing on the hospital site, but we strongly oppose the incursion of this plan onto Maple Avenue, where it risks disrupting our most valuable stock of affordable housing. After 6 years in Africa and Brazil, my family moved here because we were seeking racial diversity. Because of the affordable housing on Maple, our city reflects the world. I ran the Piney Branch Elementary PTA along with my friend Denise Jones. We advocated at County Council to save the Piney Branch pool. And these days, I make Small Things Matter food deliveries on Maple. So I am dedicated to ensuring we do not drive out the very community that makes Takoma Park Takoma Park. These are the questions you face. 1, who does this plan benefit, developers or tenants? Why did planning staff repeatedly promise an OLO equity study that never existed? Staff brushed off the city's equity concerns by asserting there would be an OLO study that was false. And how are votes by the city and planning board legitimate given such misinformation? 2, what would an equity analysis show? That this plan will destroy more affordable housing than it will create? That it will incentivize the teardown of rent-stabilized buildings, drive up rents, and displace residents? Why wouldn't we believe the planning board vice chair who said there will be displacement and gentrification with this plan? Why wouldn't we believe the board chair who said there is no way to guarantee no net loss of affordable housing? 3, this site is outside the walkshed of any transit center. So why are the proposed heights greater than recent zoning around actual transit centers like Glenmont and Forest Glen? 4, What is the combined effect on our infrastructure of these thousands of new units and a geometric population increase while thousands of new units pop up at Takoma Metro and on the Purple Line? And 5, we finally have a climate study predicting a 78% increase in greenhouse gas emissions. As the climate emergency accelerates, why would we approve such a dystopian project? This plan was born under a previous troubled planning board and previous city and county councils. We count on you to send it back, reduce the upzoning, reject displacement, and refocus on the hospital site. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Bob Dreer.
Hi, I'm Bob Dreer. I live in Takoma Park. The proposed minor master plan amendment is the most consequential planning decision for Takoma Park in decades, potentially increasing our population by almost 40%. If adopted as proposed, it will have sweeping consequences. Some of those consequences, such as the risk that the plan will incentivize developers to replace the affordable apartment buildings along Maple Avenue, displacing existing residents, have raised serious concerns in our community. What I find deeply troubling is how little we actually know about the consequences of the proposed plan and the absence of any consideration of alternatives. There's been no analysis of the environmental impacts of the proposed development on parkland or on stormwater. A climate analysis has just been released showing that the development under the plan may increase greenhouse gas emissions in our area by a shocking 78%, but it came so late in the process that it was not even considered by the planning board. There's still no analysis of the potential impacts of all this development on traffic or on our city's infrastructure and schools. Perhaps most troubling, there's no analysis of the socioeconomic impacts of the plan, including the critical question of potential displacement of current residents, even though our community has repeatedly raised that concern. And there's no analysis of alternative approaches to developing the hospital site or Maple Avenue that might achieve our goals with less adverse impact. Site-specific impact analysis may still occur when developers submit specific proposals, but that will happen after the critical zoning changes that determine the amount and character of permissible development have already been made. That doesn't make sense to me. I've spent much of my career working on federal planning for natural resources. The National Environmental Policy Act requires federal agencies to consider and disclose to the public the environmental impacts of their actions before making a decision. Consideration of alternatives is the heart of that process. NEPA applies to the federal government, of course, not to municipal planning. But the basic principle of examining environmental and social consequences before acting, looking before you leap, should apply to any rational planning process. In this case, Takoma Park and Montgomery County are about to determine the legally permissible levels of development for a huge tract of our city. Yet we're asked to make this momentous decision without any information about the likely impacts of this level of development on stormwater, on our schools, on traffic, on noise and air pollution, and on existing residents, and with a devastating climate analysis just released and not considered by planners. And we have no information on what an alternative zoning approach might lead to. What would Takoma Park look like in 10 years under zoning that prescribed lower density, lower building heights, more residential character, more green space? We don't know. I find it astonishing the county planning process would put our city in this position, and I urge the county council to reject the MMPA until analysis has been provided showing us what will likely happen to our community under the current proposal for high-density urban development, and comparing that to what a future Takoma Park could look like if zoning allowed more moderate development. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Wayne Sherwood.
Good evening. My name is Wayne Sherwood. I live at 218 Grand Avenue. I've lived in Takoma Park since 1991. I live right behind the Takoma Park Community Center, Maple Avenue, and around the planning from Harvard in 1966, and I spent most of my career in research and advocacy for affordable housing, which has been a major concern of mine. The proposed minor master plan amendment is not a plan. It would change the zoning in Takoma Park to allow new housing and commercial development at scales greatly in excess of what would be reasonable or appropriate, zoning categories more appropriate for downtown Bethesda or Rockville. New buildings could be 150 feet high at 10 sites along Maple Avenue and 120 feet high on most of the Adventist site. The existing infrastructure, streets, highways, public transit, schools, and local government services could not handle this amount of new development. The plan simply leaves those things to others. Implementing this plan is likely to create an upheaval in Takoma Park's most racially and economically diverse area, as well as gradual economic gentrification and displacement. The plurality of people who live on the buildings along Maple Avenue are persons of color. Their displacement would raise significant racial equity issues. At the high-rise buildings along Maple Ave currently fits All of the high-rise buildings along Maple Avenue currently fit some definition of affordable. All of these could be lost if their owners decided it was more cost-effective to tear them down and replace them. That could result in a loss of 1,260 affordable housing units in the plan area. A climate assessment produced by the Planning Board says, assuming the plan is adopted as proposed and that every rezoned property is torn down and redeveloped at maximum allowance, the plan area's population would increase from approximately 4,000 to over 10,000 people. The chairman of the Planning Board, Artie Harris, told the county planning staff at a planning board meeting to add wording to the plan urging the city of Takoma Park to change its rent stabilization law so that a rent stabilization exemption for new development could be extended for what appears to me might be a long period of time. It seems to me that could directly benefit some developers who participate in the Montgomery Housing Partnership. In conclusion, I ask the County Council not to approve this minor master plan amendment, and that instead you either create a new plan of your own, one that strengthens affordable housing in the planning area, or else send this deeply flawed plan back to the Planning Board for further consideration. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you this evening.
Thank you. Our next panel is Tom Gagliardo, Jason Klein, Weymouth Spence, and Fred Feinstein. Tom Gagliardo.
Thank you, Mr. Friedson. I've lived in Takoma Park for some 50 years, first as a tenant for 10 years or so, and since then as a homeowner. I even served as the city attorney in the 1980s. I care about my community. Even though it is unlikely that I will see the first development the plan permits, I care because my daughters live here. Takoma Park is our family home. I want to begin by associating myself with remarks made by my neighbors Sue Katz-Miller, Bob Dreer, and Wayne Sherwood, all of whom I hardly knew before all of us became concerned by the proposed fundamental and unnecessary transformation of our community. I oppose the plan as written, but I wholeheartedly embrace changing zoning to permit construction of multifamily rental units, both market and affordable, whatever those terms may mean, on the Adventist-owned parcels. Adventist Healthcare and Washington Adventist University presented a concept plan focused on high and medium buildings and condos. It made a lot of sense, and the soon-to-be enacted faith zoning ordinance, Councilmember Stewart, and I know all of you have co-sponsored it, I think it's going to pass, if it's tweaked to include the hospital if it's tweaked to include the hospital as a religiously affiliated institution, it would create housing both supporters and opponents of the plan as written are calling for. It makes no sense to create the same zoning for the Adventist property as currently exists for downtown Silver Spring. It is reliably predictable, as my colleagues have said, that upzoning will result in many current residents of Maple Avenue losing their homes in one of the most diverse and affordable neighborhoods, where people of color, recent immigrants, single parents, elderly, and those who work paycheck to paycheck live near good schools, parks, and mass transit. Look at Bethesda. In the Battery Lane District, 6 existing apartments containing 477 units will be replaced with 1,530 new units. That's according to MoCo 360. Sound good? Maybe not. On Maple Avenue, there are approximately at least a half a dozen low-rise buildings containing affordable units which are not protected through the Montgomery Housing Partnership. Roughly 1,000 people live there. The land on which those buildings sit is to be upzoned to permit much taller buildings. And the simple economic reality is that is that is a strong incentive for owners, whether they sell or retain ownership, to demolish and replace existing structures, just like Bethesda. After all, that's the purpose of the plan. Will there be no net loss of affordable housing? Let's do the math. If there's a 25-unit building, all of which is affordable, and it's replaced by a 100-unit building that is subject to the county's 12.5% moderately priced dwelling unit set-aside, the new building will contain only 13 units, a net loss of 12. Here are 3 suggestions. 1, zoning on the Adventist property should conform to a modified faith zoning ordinance. 2, limit heights on Maple Avenue to existing limits, as former Takoma Park City Council member Peter Kovar has suggested, and leave all the rest of the area alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jason Klein.
Good evening, Council President Friedson and members of the County Council. I am Jason Klein, Executive Director of Corporate Real Estate for Adventist Healthcare, and I'm here to speak in support of most of the recommendations in the Takoma Park Minor Master Plan regarding the former Washington Adventist Hospital site. This 17.4-acre site is a major property owner within the amendment area. In recent years, we made the difficult decision to relocate the 100-plus-year-old hospital from Takoma Park to the White Oak area of Montgomery County in order to provide better regional access to health care. However, Adventist Healthcare remains committed to coordinating with its partner, the Washington Adventist University, to ensure that the former hospital site continues to be a viable and valuable community asset. The planning board draft is a good start. As you are aware, the former hospital property is located east of Sligo Creek between Maplewood Avenue and Carroll Avenue. The Washington Adventist University flanks the eastern edge of the property. The former hospital campus currently contains the aging hospital structure with surface parking, which will be removed, and a medical office building that will remain. I note that the medical office building along Carroll Avenue is independently owned and operated, and any new development on the site will need to accommodate the existing structure and its established access routes. Adventist Healthcare and Washington Adventist University have been active participants in the minor master plan amendment process by attending all the Montgomery County Parks and Planning open houses, providing a community briefing in late 2022, and attending all Planning Board and Takoma Park City Council plan updates and work sessions. We're impressed by the efforts that planning staff and city staff have made to engage Takoma Park residents and incorporate their feedback in the public hearing draft. The resulting land use and zoning recommendations for the hospital property respond to community comments by providing flexibility and density to achieve the desired outcomes of housing, gathering places, and trail connections within the property. We also support the recommended dedication of Sligo Creek Parkland from the hospital property and commend the planning board draft for accommodating the dedication in a manner that supports redevelopment through density capture and other regulatory credits associated with the to-be dedicated park area. Other recommendations in the planning board draft meet laudable planning objectives, but currently lack the clarity or flexibility to respond to a likely piecemeal build-out with unknown future market conditions. This is particularly true of our if our campus redevelops in conjunction with Washington Adventist University's property. We address these specific issues in a separate attachment that is submitted with this testimony. Adventist Healthcare will continue to remain engaged in the minor master plan amendment process to address the noted issues and ensure that the former hospital property will remain a community anchor well into the future. Thank you for the opportunity to share these comments.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Weymouth Spence.
Council President Friesen and the members of the County Council, thank you for this opportunity to comment on the Planning Board draft of the Takoma Park Minor Master Plan Amendment. My name is Weymouth Spence, and I'm the president of Washington Adventist University, an approximately 28.8-acre university campus located in one of the potential growth areas of the plan. The university is bounded by Maple Avenue, Flower Avenue, Carroll Avenue, and the former Washington Adventist Hospital site. We have been in Takoma Park since 1904, and I have been president since 2008. The university is owned by the Seventh-day Adventist Church and offers a quality education to students of different faiths from all over the world. There are currently a little under 600 students enrolled in our undergraduate and graduate programs, and we are poised to grow ever larger. I am pleased that the Planning Board draft of the Master Plan Amendment provides a number of tools and opportunities to do so. Together with Adventist Healthcare, which controls the 17.4-acre former Washington Adventist Hospital campus to the west of the university, we have envisioned how our combined portion of the minor master plan area could grow to address current and future university needs. We also understood that the combined campus could help address areas-wide housing, recreation, and connectivity opportunities if the plan were done correctly. On that note, I am pleased that the Planning Board draft has recognized the need to rezone our properties to a more flexible zone that also respects the built environment outside the campus. Under its current zoning, the university must comply with the applicable residential development standards that are incompatible with modern universities. These constraints have stifled our growth and put us at a competitive disadvantage in comparison to other similarly sized universities. The CR zone recommended in the Planning Board draft provides the critical flexibility for the university to grow as needs and funding will allow. While we are greatly pleased with the other recommendations of the minor master plan, there are a few noteworthy exceptions. Primarily, we are concerned with the specific recommendations that years from now may be interpreted too literally, so as to make potential redevelopment opportunities too expensive or infeasible. These matters include recommendations for our iconic open space along Flower Avenue, the Green Promenade, recommended along Maplewood Avenue and into the campus, and planned gateway bordering our campus. Furthermore, our central common space provides identity for the university and revered by our students, alumni, and staff. We find it unprecedented for a private religious affiliated university to allow their most sacred open space to be considered public open space. We address these items in technical corrections we propose in an attachment submitted with this testimony. We look forward to staying engaged as the minor master plan moves forward to final approval, and look forward to working with you to ensure that the plan may accommodate the positive changes that envision for Takoma Park and our campus. Thank you for your kind consideration.
Thank you. And our next speaker on this panel is Fred Feinstein.
Hi, thank you. My name is Fred Feinstein, and I've been a proud resident of Takoma Park for 45 years. One of the things I valued most in our city is it's made up of people from all walks of life with a wonderful mix of cultural roots. The diversity didn't just happen. It's a result of rent stabilization policies that have made rents here more affordable than elsewhere. In the many years I've lived here, the city has successfully resisted numerous efforts to undermine the availability of affordable housing. As property values have soared, preserving affordability has become even more challenging, which is why I and many others here tonight are very concerned about the implications of the MMPA on retaining the character of our city. What has been particularly mystifying is the application of the MMPA to two completely different parts of our city. It proposes the same upzoning applied to the former Adventist Hospital site, as we've just heard, which is a large vacant parcel of land. It's the same upzoning also applies to the Maple Avenue corridor, the most densely populated area of our city. Upzoning the hospital site can create the opportunity to build new affordable housing that I and most of us here today support. But applying the same upzoning to the Maple Avenue corridor could have an opposite effect, creating the very real possibility of undermining the preservation of affordable housing that is so central to the character of Takoma Park. Why are these two completely different parts of our city being treated the same under this plan? Displacement is a very different issue for developing an uninhabited hospital site than it is for the densely populated Maple Avenue corridor. There is more than a reasonable fear that the current draft of MMPA will lead to replacing existing Maple Avenue buildings with new ones that are not subject to the rent controls for 5 years. What will become of our neighbors when their housing and their homes are replaced? Like many efforts to undermine our affordable rental policies in the past, the MMPA doesn't propose elimination of existing rent stabilization policies, although, as we've heard, there's a very troubling suggestion that they should be modified. But it surely opens disturbing possibilities. What problems are we solving by applying the same zoning changes needed to encourage building homes on vacant land to the most densely populated part of our city? I believe there is a real potential to reach a broad consensus on the sensible development of the former hospital grounds that would unify and excite our community. Let's focus on achieving this important accomplishment. Let's not handicap that effort by combining it with a controversial and very different undertaking of changing the rules that apply to the Maple Avenue corridor. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next panel is Jacqueline Moore, Denise Jones, Paul Hubner, and Carrie Kasiki. When you're ready, Jacqueline Moore, you have 3 minutes.
My name is Jacqueline Moore. I have lived in Takoma Park since 1992, and I live in Ward 2. Before launching into the focus of my comments, I would like to remind you that as Takoma Park resident and former president of the American Institute of Architects, President Carl Elefante has said time and time again, the greenest building is the one that is already built. I also encourage you to go through Paul Krastowski's expert environmental analysis with a fine-tooth comb and to take his findings seriously. I'm extremely concerned about the ineffective community engagement process. On August 1st, 2023, I passed out information regarding the MMPA to residents who attended Takoma Park's National Night Out event. I spoke with close to 60, that's 60, people who are residents of the multifamily buildings on Maple Avenue. Some of the people I spoke with have lived in their apartments for several decades, but most are recent immigrants who are not just new to Takoma Park, they're new to the United States. Not one of them had heard anything about the MMPA, not from the planning board and not from the city of Takoma Park. I realized that the pandemic hampered the ability of both the planning board and the city to do outreach, but this is precisely why this project, if approved, should be delayed. Unless you speak with the people most affected by the potential changes, you have not done your job. Although I have heard officials from the planning board publicly state that they've followed all the rules and procedures in place for community engagement, this tells me that the model for community engagement needs to be strengthened a lot. This plan amendment needs to be sent back to the planning board and an equity analysis must be completed. True outreach must involve actually and explicitly explaining the risks associated with upzoning, rent increases, building teardowns, and displacement. The current community engagement model and process must be overhauled. The current model may check boxes, but it is ineffective, incomplete, and inequitable. Do not approve this plan as written. And I also wanted to mention that the Community Equity Coalition had a letter that we submitted to the planning board signed by 235 people that was urging the planning board to remove the Maple Avenue district from the plan area in the Takoma Park Minor Master Plan Amendment. That's 235. And that was done in a matter of days. I'm sure we could have gotten more signatures if we had managed to get ourselves together just a little faster, but things move fast. So thank you for your time and attention. And again, please do not approve this plan as written. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Denise Jones.
Good evening. I'm Denise Jones. I am a longtime resident of Takoma Park. I live in Ward 5 on Maple Avenue, and I'm here this evening representing the Community Equity Coalition, an ad hoc group of Maple Avenue and neighboring residents of Maple Avenue and neighboring streets. Jackie just spoke the truth. August was the first time that I'd heard about this, and we quickly mobilized to hold some public events to inform people. Ask them, did you know about it? Yes, okay, Artie Harris and his staff followed the rules for community engagement during COVID, and I don't think I met one person, that's me, that I met one person who had heard about this plan coming. We don't have NIMBY attitudes, but we don't want to be squeezed like cockroaches into, smaller units and squeezed out of the town. I've lived here a long time. I have contributed to the community in the schools as a NAACP Parents Council representative, served on the PTA with Susan Miller, who you heard from earlier, my best friend, served in the the Deputy Superintendent's Minority Achievement Advisory Board previously, the Holton Arms, Parents of Color Committee, and I'm saying all this because I want you to know that I chose Takoma Park. I chose Takoma Park because I wanted a place that would be more comfortable for me and for my daughter, who I've raised as a global citizen. Progressive Takoma Park is now telling me, we don't want you here. Get to getting. We want the tax dollars from new people, as a woman who sat here in this seat was saying earlier. I want as many of my friends to come and enjoy Takoma Park as I do. Well, we don't need the world here in Takoma Park. Why couldn't we focus on the development, I guess my time is up, on the development of the hospital instead? I just want you to understand that I know many of my neighbors may not know these words and be able to articulate it in this way, but this is a legislated gentrification plan, and I am asking you to reject it. Please. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Paul Hubner.
Can you hear me? Good evening. I'm Paul Hubner, and I've lived in a 1913 Takoma Park bungalow for 34 years. I was born in Washington, D.C. I went to Nativity grade school and graduated from Gonzaga High School. My mother, my sister, and I lived in apartments in Northwest D.C. Like many lower-income families facing serious financial challenges, we moved 9 times over the course of my childhood. During those years, finding stable, affordable housing in a safe community was a constant source of difficulty and anxiety for my family. I'm retired now. I worked as a union laborer, a union carpenter, a superintendent, as a construction manager. As a construction manager, I worked for developers, so I know that maximum flexibility and variances are dreams come true to them. For families seeking affordable housing, these look more like nightmares. I'm here to stand with my apartment-dwelling neighbors and ask for the assistance of our County Council member, Kate Stewart, to postpone the MMPA until this council affords me, my fellow residents, and the council staff the opportunity to do the appropriate work needed for a proper assessment of this proposed redevelopment. It should be noted that the current MMPA is not a redevelopment plan, but a zoning upgrade that caters to landowners and developers. The MMPA proposal should be properly realigned to meet the demands of our city council revolution, and answer the huge remaining questions in full. While we agree with development on the old hospital site, the city council resolution and city residents ask, why was Maple Avenue corridor included in the hospital, and by whom? Where's the promised equity study? Where has the MMPA established no net loss of affordable housing? When will there be a traffic study? Where's the stormwater study? How can the planning board ask to weaken our own rent stabilization when their proposal would create some 2 million square feet of new uncontrolled market rate housing? How does the climate analysis align with the city climate assessment emergency? Nothing lines up. Send this amendment back to planning to review for a complete, broader set of data for analysis from a resident-focused perspective. Residents have still not been afforded the appropriate answers on the many points raised in the city's resolution. Maple Avenue is an established community of people, old and young, who live in stable, affordable, rent-stabilized housing close to shopping and public transportation. It is a safe community. Any development on Maple Avenue should ensure that residents get to remain in our community. Bring more, not fewer, benefits to this densely populated, established, and cohesive community of Takoma Park residents. I will note that this morning on NPR, it was revealed that over 50% of renters cannot afford to pay their rent. Don't fix what ain't broke. Please do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carrie Kasiki.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Kasiki, and I'm testifying on behalf of the Coalition for Smarter Growth. We advocate for walkable, inclusive, transit-oriented communities as the most equitable and sustainable way for our region to grow and provide opportunities for all. CSG supports the draft plan amendment, which outlines a vision for an inclusive, environmentally resilient, and vibrant community with great access to parks and amenities, and an abundance of housing that supports the continued affordability and diversity of this plan area. Too often, low-income communities and people of color have been left behind when it comes to investments in climate resilience, access to parks and green space, and safe streets for walking and biking. We're glad to see that this plan contains comprehensive recommendations in each of these areas. We also support the proposal to allow mixed-use development on the former Washington Adventist Hospital site. This will open up a multitude of exciting opportunities and community benefits, new housing on a site where today there is none, new public gathering spaces, and new local walkable retail options. The plan also recommends allowing a diversity of housing types, which can offer a greater range of affordability and address a wider range of housing needs, as well as building more housing, both market rate and affordable, in the plan area. We support these recommendations. The plain fact is that we need more housing in Montgomery County and in Takoma Park. We are falling behind on our share of regional housing targets, and we are not on track to be able to offer people the housing that they need. This has real and serious consequences. If we fail to build the estimated 10,000 additional housing units that we need countywide by 2030 to meet future housing needs, and that's over and above the 31,000 that we're already projected to build, that shortfall is not just a number. That's 10,000 households that we are turning away. Affordable housing is rightly a major focus of the plan's housing recommendations. The plan sets an explicit goal of no net loss of affordable housing. I hope in the work sessions you'll have a chance to review the plan in detail and you can read it, and if you can't find it, I can point it out to you. And it's supported by detailed recommendations to achieve that goal. We strongly support those recommendations. When market rate housing is used thoughtfully in combination with an emphasis on affordable housing and protections against displacement, as this plan recommends, it complements our affordable housing and equity goals. Market rate housing and mixed income projects allows us to build a greater number of affordable units at deeper levels of subsidy than it is feasible for us to build through public investment alone. And each new unit of housing that we build eases the competition over limited units that currently feeds rising housing costs under our current shortage, which I'll mention, I'm 24 years old, I'm a renter, very personal to me. And it takes us one step closer to meeting our county's housing needs. In closing, we urge you to support this plan, especially its recommendations on housing and land use, and we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next panel is Dan Reid, Carter Doherty, Casey Kostick, and Colleen Cordz. Dan Reid, when you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
All right. Good evening. My name is Dan Reid, and I serve as the Regional Policy Director for Greater Washington. We're a nonprofit that works to advance sustainable and equitable land use, transportation, and housing in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm also a neighbor. I live on Hartford Avenue, about a mile from the hospital. We support the Planning Board draft of the Takoma Park Minor Master Plan, and I'll tell you why. So the hospital's been gone for about 4 years, and I think this plan is a big opportunity to reimagine its campus. You know, like I said, I live close by. I walk by the hospital constantly, often with my dog. I think about it a lot, you know, both in the context of what I think it could be. You know, I like the vision and the plan for creating a place with shopping and homes and possibly some kind of community gathering space. I also think about how hard it was for me to find a home. I've lived in my house for 4 years. I spent 2 years looking for a house. As I think some of the other speakers have noted, you know, I've moved multiple times in my life. I've lived in my house for 4 years, which is the longest I've lived anywhere in my entire life. I've lived in 17 houses, and I'm going to be 36 in April. Like, the reason why why we support this plan is because Takoma Park is already changing. It is unrecognizable from the Takoma Park I remember growing up here in the 1990s. It is a much more expensive place to live now. It is gentrifying now. Planning department did a study recently that said that the Takoma Park area has lost a significant number of affordable housing units already. New homes in this neighborhood already sell for $1.5 million or more. The status quo doesn't work. This is a lovely place to live if you were lucky enough to be here already. I thank goodness that I can live like just outside of it, right? I think this plan could do a lot of good. I recognize there's a lot of strong feelings about it. I hold that. I live here too. I don't want people to lose their homes. I don't want people to have that kind of insecurity in their homes. I also want people to feel like they have a choice to stay in Takoma Park if they need a different kind of home. And I think this plan will help provide that too. More choices, more options for different kinds of housing, more price ranges, more styles of housing. So that if you want to stay in Takoma Park in this neighborhood on Maple Avenue, you can. If you'd like a different kind of home, you need a different kind of home, you can. If you live somewhere else and you want to live here, you can. And that's what this is really about, is giving people choices. My written comments are submitted earlier today. You can see them, but thank you for your time.
We have your written testimony. Thank you. And our next speaker is Carter Doherty.
Hello there. Hello there. My name is Carter Doherty. I'm a resident of Takoma Park for about 12 years in Ward 1 up by the fire station. Thank you to the Montgomery County Council and especially Council President Friedson for holding this event here in Takoma Park, far away from Rockville and your home in Chevy Chase. Welcome to our small but slightly mouthy town where we are sure to debate everything. And Councilmember Stewart, a special welcome to you. I hope you enjoyed the chances you used to have to walk to work. I'm speaking on behalf of Montgomery for All, a grassroots community-led group advocating for sustainable and inclusive land use and transit policies in Montgomery County, Maryland. I am on its steering committee. The planned zoning changes under the minor master plan amendment are an important step for Takoma Park and Montgomery County for a prosaic yet important reason. It will pave the way for building more housing. With the whole country debating how to ease the terrible crisis of housing availability and affordability, this line from a recent study by the Urban Institute jumped out at me. A massive supply shortage is causing high home prices and rents, and the way to fix it is to build more housing. Any factor that does not influence the housing supply or the demand for household creation is of second-order importance. We have to build. The minor master plan can also contribute to a diverse collection of housing that avoids the over-concentration of affordable housing on Maple Avenue. Last year, the median home price in Takoma Park hit $820,000. We should be seeking out opportunities to build housing that create housing that costs much less than that right now. Right now, Takoma Park effectively has residential segregation with the most affordable housing clustered in a single area and a polarized housing stock. We tip our hats to Mayor Circe and her work in proactively reaching out to people in the community. You know, when the city staff and the interns knock on doors at the behest of the mayor to make sure there is resident input, we should be proud. That is local government at work. Finally, we'd like to address an incorrect notion that is often repeated without becoming more correct, namely Takoma Park's affordable housing stock is not under threat from this change. Nonprofit developers like Montgomery Housing Partnership own a number of buildings in Takoma Park and are under a mandate to serve low-income tenants. Takoma Park has a rent stabilization law. You yourselves just passed one at the county level to guard particularly against gouging. I think there are a lot of protections in place there. I don't think anyone disputes that Montgomery County desperately needs more housing, and I think similarly few would dispute that it will take some time to remedy this problem. That said, you have the ability to speed up this process at least a little bit. So please approve the Takoma Park minor master plan amendment as soon as possible and let us start building. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see Casey Kostick here, so our next speaker is Colleen Cordz.
Colleen Cordz, 500 New York Avenue, Takoma Park. Where is the promised racial equity analysis? After residents expressed concern about harmful racial equity impacts and related questions from Takoma Park City Council, county planning staff repeatedly promised a full racial equity analysis would be done by the council's Office of Legislative Oversight. In fact, at an October 19th planning board session, staff made this claim 4 times, including twice by the acting planning director. The county planning staff repeated that assurance in a December document for our city council. But the OLO this month denied it had any intention of conducting such a study. This major error in the planning process must be corrected. The planning board voted to move its draft plan forward based in part on the staff's mistaken assurance that OLO would do the equity analysis. And the city council voted to conditionally approve the board's plan going to county council, again, based partly on that false assurance by staff. The county executive has now stepped up to commission an equity analysis, but it's not yet complete. It would be a grave injustice to proceed without such an analysis. Council President Friedson, Vice President Stewart, please don't let that happen under your leadership. Please postpone committee work sessions until the council actually has an equity analysis, as Takoma Park was promised and has carefully evaluated it. In fact, based on the likely findings of an equity analysis, the council will need to send this draft back to the planning board to reduce the proposed zoning changes. This is super urgent. Everyone following the plan knows a major concern is the potential for upzoning of Maple Avenue to raise land values, incentivizing teardowns of deeply affordable rent-stabilized buildings. They provide homes to hundreds of families, mostly residents of color with low or modest incomes. That blanket upzoning would encourage new projects likely to replace such homes with more expensive housing or even 100% commercial buildings. So the threat of displacement for current residents is real. To gamble with the future of this extremely racially diverse neighborhood through careless upzoning would reinforce systemic racism. There must be careful scrutiny of the likely impacts before zoning changes, especially evaluating this displacement threat. Thrive 2050 notes, quote, across the board, low-income and BIPOC residents are very worried about displacement as a result of new development. Yet the plan shows no sign of having seriously considered that threat, despite the intent to spark new development. In terms of community engagement, the plan is sparse on details, but indicates that Maple Avenue residents who would feel most at risk were not consulted about the upzoning. So outreach laws, too, should be part of the analysis. County Council, please insist on an equity analysis and time to evaluate it before any committee work sessions. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next panel will be Karen Elrich, Laura Barkley, Salim Firth, and Naomi Edelson. Karen Elrich, when you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Karen Elrich, and I have been a resident of Takoma Park for almost 45 years. I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts on the minor master plan created by Park and Planning. However, I must admit that without the necessary information, it's difficult for me to provide an educated response regarding the plan's impact on Takoma Park. In order to make an informed decision, there are several critical questions that need to be answered. These questions are vital for all of us, residents, the city, and yourselves, in determining whether this plan will have a positive or a detrimental impact on the future of Takoma Park. I firmly believe that everyone has the right to secure housing, and I'm proud that Takoma Park currently offers the best affordable housing in Montgomery County, thanks to our rent stabilization policy. With that in mind, I have specific concerns related to this plan. Will this plan generally increase affordable housing in a fair and equitable manner? The plan prioritizes developer flexibility, but I fail to see how it safeguards our existing affordable housing on Maple Avenue. Park and Planning has acknowledged that there will be displacements. As a resident of this diverse city, protecting our affordable housing must be a priority, rather than leaving it susceptible to the interest of developers. One of our major goals in Takoma Park is to be an equitable city. So why is Park and Planning applying a sweeping approach to increase zoning and density for the entire Maple Avenue section? If we examine other proposed zoning changes in Forest Glen, Glenmont, Littonsville, but we can observe a more cautious approach, concentrating higher density within walkable areas defined by metro stations and reducing density further out. Since Maple Avenue is not within a walkable area, it raises questions as to why such a significant increase in density is applied to one of the most densely populated parts of Takoma Park, which notably consists of economically disadvantaged Black and brown communities. A thorough equity study is vital in this regard. This plan could potentially increase Takoma Park's population by way over 30%. It is crucial that we consider the implications that this is going to have on our city. Do we have the necessary infrastructure in place? Are there sufficient funds and staff to support this increase? How will this impact our already crowded schools? How will this affect our environment? With ongoing apartment developments on Eastern Avenue and near the Metro, as well as plans for a large development by the Takoma Metro, it's important to understand how this proposed development will affect our traffic, our safety in our streets. We need a comprehensive traffic study, specifically tailored to Takoma Park, rather than relying on the studies conducted for Silver Spring. Send this plan back to Park and Planning and insist they create a plan that is based on knowing all the facts and is looking out for the people of Takoma Park and not the flexibility of developers. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Laura Barclay.
Hi, I'm Laura Barclay. I'm a resident of Lincoln Avenue, just blocks from the site, and I've enjoyed living here and raising my children in this community. My husband and I started as renters in Takoma Park and now own our second home, and I want to ensure that opportunity is available to others. The current zoning is not working. Housing is scarce and unaffordable in our area. The only way to make this more affordable is to build more. Oh, sorry. This is the opportunity to position ourselves for more housing to be built in Takoma Park and all types of housing across the affordability spectrum. With this plan, I think we should strive for maximum flexibility so that all possible options can be proposed. When there are future development proposals, we can dive into those details, but until then, let's work to maximize our opportunities. Also, I strongly support this plan because it increases density. Adding housing here near a transportation hub in a vibrant community like ours with great schools and supportive city programs versus pushing people in outer suburbs, creating sprawl and dependency on cars is good for people and good for the environment. One of our city programs, our rent stabilization program, is one that really differentiates us from other communities. Since we believe it is so special, we want to maximize the number of units built so many more may benefit from it. Finally, I recognize that this is just a zoning plan. When real opportunities present themselves, I trust that the county will provide thorough oversight on stormwater management, traffic, school capacity, et cetera, to ensure any issues are mitigated. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Salim Firth.
Thank you. Council, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Salim Firth. I'm a resident of Grant Avenue and a butter to the project, the plan amendment site. I'm also a housing economist in my day job and work on housing affordability from an economics angle all over the U.S. I support the master plan amendment. It, as many speakers before me have said, it is the generational chance to create new opportunities for housing in Takoma Park. People are worried, I think reasonably, about a 40% increase in population. But when we look at places where there's been major upzoning, that usually takes 30 to 60 years to come to fruition. So if you look at the Orange Line corridor in Arlington, Virginia, probably the best transit-oriented development in the United States, they are still turning old parking lots into apartment buildings 50 years after the Metro opened. It's going to take time. Now, we're not as big as Arlington, but it's going to take time to turn this site into housing. Getting a plan right now sets us up to allow developers to provide housing. I know for a lot of my neighbors, the word developer is a bad word, but it's like food. It comes from farmers. Housing comes from developers. They're not always good, but we cannot live without them. Finally, I'd like to say a word about the rent stabilization aspect of this. Rent stabilization plays a very strong role in keeping people in apartments for a very long time in Takoma Park. We have a really, you can have a much higher income. It's not like an affordable unit. Your rent's not going to go up. And so people stay for a really long time. It's a great feature. We also know that we have produced 0 multifamily housing units since we passed rent stabilization around the time the metro opened. And on this site, at least, the city needs to consider an exemption for some number of years. Otherwise, the only housing that will be built will be owner occupied. And they're gonna like snicker behind me, but almost every person here lives in owner occupied housing, probably 90% of us. That's the kind of housing that Takoma Park builds because our houses get to appreciate in value. We get to go to the bank and take the money out when the price of housing goes up. That's not true for multifamily housing unless we create a reasonable economic playing field. No multifamily rental housing will be built on the Adventist site, and we'll have only condos. So we need at least an exemption for that site, and I applaud the plan as it stands and look forward to working with you as it goes forward.
Thank you. Next speaker, Naomi Edelson.
Hello, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I live at 716 Erie Ave. I'm 1 block from the hospital and 2 blocks from Sligo Creek. My day job is a wildlife biologist, and I've had that for 40 years. And I'm also Jewish. And I say that because today is Tu B'Shvat. It's the Jewish Earth Day. And I'm very happy to be here to speak on behalf of the environment. I am opposed to the plan. I am not opposed to development. I'm opposed to this plan as written from an environmental perspective. The safeguards are not in there. And because it's going to increase the density so much, that obviously means more people. More people means, look, more environmental harm. We can put in some safeguards, but more people means more environmental harm. And what we have in Takoma Park is the most amazing asset. We have Sligo Creek. It is a beloved, very special creek. It goes through Montgomery County and Prince George's County, and it has a 10-mile public trail that is beloved. People are all over that trail in every stripes, in every form, biking, running, walking, playing in the water, which is dirty. That's the problem. That is very unhealthy, one of the most unhealthy creeks in this county. And the public government, various levels of government have put a lot of money to help make it healthier. It is worse. The most worst area is in Takoma Park. And if Mayor Kate Stewart may remember, when she was mayor, she got some free native plants because we were trying to put in native plants to slow the flow of water and erosion causing problems in the creek. There's been a lot of money put in. There were once only around 3 different kinds of fish species. It's improved to 15 or more now. But what about the future? What about all this money we put in to clean that creek, and it's still very, very dirty? More density, more people, more pavement, more dog poop, more rooftops, more cars, more salt on the road, more pollution. We can do some work on stormwater, but Sligo Creek is the heart and soul of our community. It really is. Everybody is out there. I have to bike on the street because the trail is too darn crowded, and I don't want to cause an accident. And it contributes to people's physical and mental health, and that's why they're out there. It's really, really an important part of making a difference for each person who lives here. We saw that. It's also home to barred owls, bald eagles, wood ducks. And why would we endanger this? Why would we do that? This is a gem to be treasured, not to be sacrificed. And, we're talking about, everyone else is talking about housing. What about housing for our neighbors, the wildlife? I do want the site developed. I live there. It'll benefit me financially as a homeowner. No kidding, it will. But not without the clear safeguards that aren't in there yet. This is just too many people in one area. And I am in favor of more neighbors, and I'm in favor of making sure the neighbors we have, and we want to keep welcoming the wildlife, also have a home. And on Tu B'Shvat, I ask you to think of all of these neighbors, our common home, the earth, as a different religion, but as Pope John talks about, it's our common home. And thank you for giving me a chance to express that.
Thank you. Our next panel, Jim Della Giacomo, Troy Jacobs, Stephen Whitney, Benjamin Glickstein. Jim Della Giacomo, when you are ready, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you to the council, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. A lot of the points I wanted to make have been said, so I'll sort of summarize. But my name is Jim Delagiacoma. I live in Ward 2, and I walked over here tonight through the Adventist and up Maple Avenue. Indeed, I walked to the Metro today. So I think we have, having a walkable city, having a city that's livable is very important. But I want to reinforce that, in the DMV, we need more housing and we need to build it. And I support the Minor Master Plan Amendment because it opens up those opportunities, as it says. Unfortunately, we don't have the federal, state, and policies. We don't have the funding that would build it. So it has to be, as one of the previous speakers said, built by developers, which, that's what we need. We need to incentivize you with this plan the opportunities to build for private organizations to build housing, and also for non-profits. I think the other point that I also want to raise is that we've heard from our neighbours at the Washington Adventist community, and to understand that we may have many desires for what might go on their property. But it is private land, and I think they support opening up the opportunities that the Minor Master Plan Amendment proposes. And I think we have to recognise that we have to be fairly careful about being prescriptive about our neighbours. In some ways, you could say we need to do unto others. This is private land, and I think it's important to recognise that. But I think the redevelopment or any development in this land would present opportunities. I think the mayor raised some about the schooling. I have 2 children in the Montgomery County public school system. But I also recognize we have a multi-billion-dollar school system, and if we can't work this out, then we have, I don't know who is going to do it. We have the tools in planning. I think, I love Sligo Creek like everybody does. I don't think that anybody is interested in desecrating it. I think we have these tools in our planning mechanisms and in our governance to make sure that our community is protected. I think the last point, or one of the last points I would make, is that just to sort of acknowledge that we have in some ways an A-B experiment running here in Takoma Park. We haven't built any public multifamily housing, and it's being built all around us. And it's not unreasonable to ask about what role rent stabilization policy, the policies play in that. Finally, I think some of the language you've heard today is quite sort of worst case scenario planning. I don't feel, as I've said before in other meetings, that it necessarily will happen. And I think we need to just be recognise that there's a lot of common ground here. We do want public space. We do want more housing. And I think there's a lot of discussion about what we're not really disagreeing on what to do, but often how to do it. So thank you.
Next speaker, Troy Jacobs.
Thank you. I'm Troy Jacobs. I'm a Takoma Park City resident on Flower Avenue, adjacent to the business district at Flower and Erie, which is part of the Minor Master Amendment area or catchment. And so I will be impacted by the plan as it goes forward. I want to give a big thanks to Montgomery Planning for their hard work, which has been ongoing for 3 or 4 years to get us all to this point, and shepherding the process, which has been data-driven, innovative to the challenges that we've experienced over the last couple of years, and community vetted. Certainly the process is not perfect, and I would encourage the County Council, Planning, Montgomery Planning, and the board to look to ways to improve the process and improve feedback. But this is not a situation where we want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. The current board-approved plan amendment addresses the need for improved infrastructure, varied housing types, and additional public amenities. It sets the needed parameters so that when we actually have development applications and resources for development, we can have meaningful, concrete discussions about affordable housing, about environmentally resilient and healthy and safe communities, and other types of progressive development that we can only fantasize about now. The recently shared climate assessment for the MMPA reinforces the immediate need to pivot away from sprawl, the longer commutes that residents are experiencing to get affordable housing, which is often outside of the county, and the dependence on automobiles, in favor of more diverse, dense, mixed development. And where I sit on Flower Avenue, I have to take this in the context of the Purple Line opening and already existing the Long Branch sector plan and Tacoma Langley plan. The time is now for approving this minor master plan amendment, and I look forward to County Council approving it very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Stephen Whitney.
Hi. I've lived in Takoma Park since 1981. I've spent a lot of time walking in the area of Maple Avenue. Tonight I'm speaking on behalf of Takoma Stormwater Solutions, TSS, which is an ad hoc group of Takoma Park residents concerned about growing stormwater threats in our area. TSS appeals to the Planning Board to make a small but essential revision to the MMPA draft section on stormwater management to clarify severe risks that will have to be addressed and are not mentioned at all. A bullet point on page 97 happily states that the county should, quote, collaborate with the City of Takoma Park on stormwater management opportunities within the Brashears Run drainage area, end quote. TSS requests additional text stating that the Maple Avenue stream valley, yes, Maple Avenue is a stream valley. The stream is named Brashears Run. This is the low point of a drainage area of some 550 acres with a history of stormwater problems. Intense development in the valley was made possible and successful starting in the 1950s because underground gray infrastructure that we do not see today, but which serves this area every day, was put in. That was 70 years ago. Back in 2009, a city commission storm mitigation analysis expressly doubted the ability of this infrastructure to protect against intense storm events. Given what is known about coming rainfall increases, it is imperative to verify the gray infrastructure capacity as an early step of the proposed County Takoma Park collaboration, and before any construction there is permitted. Ignoring stormwater infrastructure can be costly. Takoma Park paid dearly in the 2005 timeframe when protection of the new community center in the Maple Avenue Stream Valley was determined to require an unplanned surrounding flood wall. The city had been warned of this by several residents. At the same time, the planned gym, the most popular amenity promised to residents, ended up unaffordable and dropped from the project. A feeling of City Hall betrayal prevails in Takoma Park to this day. TSS also requests that the MMPA reference the technical memo on Maple Avenue stormwater mitigation strategies authored in 2021 by Paul Kristofsky, PhD, who is TSS's chief scientist. It identifies storm and groundwater risks that are vital to consider prior to any permitting in the plan area. The study is available on the TSS website. The web link is tacomastormwatersolutions.net. How will the stormwater infrastructure under Maple Avenue perform in the future? Qualified experts can provide that kind of insight, enabling us to better predict costs and realize our visions without excluding promoted amenities and having to say we're sorry. Thank you for all your sincere efforts to sensibly develop the MMPA area.
Thank you. Is Benjamin Glickstein here? Last call for Benjamin Glickstein. Okay, we're going to move on to our next panel. Emmanuel Wagner, Rob Goldman, Cheryl Gross-Glazer, David Reid. As soon as you're ready, Emmanuel Wagner, you have 3 minutes.
All right. Thank you so much, dear council members. We're almost done here, but I want to say a few words. No? Oh, boy. Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't want to jinx it. So my name is Emmanuel Wagner. I live in Takoma Park, and my spouse and I both work in renewable energy and hydrogen issues. My family owns a battery electric vehicle, and I own a hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicle, which is parked right outside. And so climate and sustainable development issues are of concern and dear to us. I'm also one of those immigrants that make up 30% of Takoma Park's population. The plan in front of you is the first major opportunity, as others have said, since rent stabilization was enacted in Takoma Park in the 1970s. It will expand our pool of multifamily housing. For 50 years, no new apartments have been built in this city. The results are staggering. Takoma Park has lost population since the 1970s, whereas Maryland has increased its population by 50% and Montgomery County has almost doubled. So I think it's about time for Takoma Park to open its arms to new residents, like me, by adding new homes while ensuring that current residents are not displaced. Takoma Park can come closer to a 15-minute city where residents can run most of their errands locally. Adding commercial zoning to residential zoning, as this minor master plan does, is a good step in that direction. It also increases the local tax base and reduces the need to drive. In general, increasing density is more energy and environmentally friendly than building out into rural areas. The environmental plan shows that emissions per household are expected to decrease under this plan, even though we've heard this 80%, 87% increase in GHG emissions. Per capita, it'll significantly decrease. In short, the plan makes sense from a balanced environmental perspective. I will state that a zoning change does not create new homes in itself. Much work will be needed to be done by city and county staff to make Montgomery County and Takoma Park attractive to potential building developers. Zoning change is the first step in attracting potential development in the areas. However, far more is needed to support any of that new housing in the city, and we don't have a great track record in this city to do that. But it's in your power to show that Montgomery County is open to change and smart development, so please support and adopt this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Goldman.
Good evening. My name is Robert Goldman. I'm the president of Montgomery Housing Partnership, MHP. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to address the council on the Takoma Park Minor Master Plan Amendment. MHP serves more than 4,000 residents in Montgomery County and neighboring communities by providing nearly 3,000 quality affordable homes. MHP is one of the largest property owners within the master plan's boundaries. MHP owns 5 separate properties comprising over 400 homes within the master plan, most of which are located along Maple Avenue. At present, MHP has no foreseeable plans to redevelop any of its properties in the Maple Avenue district. Some properties, such as our 7610 Maple apartment community, have been renovated within the last decade, while others will be renovated in the coming years, like our Franklin Senior Apartments building. MHP does not, while we do not have any plans, but we do support the zoning being recommended by staff, as it would provide an opportunity to increase the amount of income-restricted affordable housing if redevelopment is deemed necessary. As properties along Maple Avenue continue to age and come to the end of their useful life, Takoma Park will face a number of very difficult challenges. Additional density will provide a tool for redevelopment over the long term. Any redevelopment, if it does occur, should be done in a way to minimize and prevent displacement. The site of the former Washington Adventist Hospital provides an exciting opportunity for the community. We urge the council to maximize the percentage of affordable housing units on the site. The site represents a generational opportunity to address the acute need for affordable housing in the Down County and enhance the quality of life for the city residents. We are generally in support of the recommendation in the affordable housing section of the plan. We especially support the language seeking to increase the amount of new affordable housing, prioritizing 2- and 3-bedroom MPDUs, and the inclusion of language that encourages developers of private residential lots to partner with nonprofit affordable housing providers to reach deeper levels of affordability. In addition, MHP supports a 15% MPDU requirement for the plan. Lastly, we recommend strengthening the language in the plan regarding pilots as a tool to preserve and expand affordable housing within the master plan. As you guys know full well, you have made pilots a matter of right. Unfortunately, the city of Takoma Park has not. Right now, it's done sort of on a case-by-case basis, and for now, it is completely on hold. So we greatly would appreciate and welcome language that would support by right housing, pilots in the master plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Cheryl Gross-Glazer here? Okay, we're going to move on to David Reid.
Good evening. My name is David Reid. I am president of the Long Branch Sligo Community Association. As a community of 440 residential units directly contiguous with the minor master plan area, we asked 2 years ago, what will be the plan's impact on traffic? As our engagement has continued and as the plan has evolved, we have repeatedly requested a comprehensive traffic analysis, and there are several reasons for that request. First, our neighborhood streets are already overwhelmed by cut-through traffic between New Hampshire and Piney Branch, creating threats from speeding cars, failure to stop at stop signs, and disregard for pedestrians and cyclists. With an anticipated increase of some 6,000 new residents, those threats will only intensify. Second, the anticipated 3,500 new units will lie outside the half-mile walk shed to public transportation hubs at Takoma Metro, New Hampshire University, and Arliss Purple Line Station. It's unrealistic to think that thousands of new residents will be walking or cycling over a mile every day to those transportation hubs, particularly in inclement weather and if they are encumbered with aluminum ladders. Third, the transportation annex attached to the MMPA draft uses the downtown Silver Spring and adjacent communities transportation plan as its reference points. The annex states that the 3,500 new units will not create appreciable impact on traffic flowing through Silver Spring. It is professionally irresponsible to use that as a MMPA reference point. Housing 6,000 new residents may well create congestion nightmares in Takoma Park, whereas Silver Spring may not register any change whatsoever. Can the bridge over Maple, can arteries along Carroll and Flower and the Sligo Creek Parkway absorb the new traffic volume? 4, city staff claimed that existing streets were able to handle workers and visitors when the hospital was in full operation. That view, however, overlooks the fact that even with the massive parking lot at the corner of Flower and Carroll, staff and visitors frequently parked on our neighborhood streets. And I suggest that you not overlook the fact that new high-rise buildings are anticipated where that parking lot currently exists. Where will those new residents park? We have asked many time and again, for a comprehensive traffic analysis. That request has been repeatedly denied. So please help us avoid the embarrassment of the MMPA being Takoma Park's second major development plan rejected for non-compliance with the State Highway Administration requirements. Conduct a comprehensive traffic study first. Next, analyze and discuss that study. Then and only then should the MPA be voted on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our next panel. Jessica Landman, Marty Shore, Giuseppe Cimino, Susan Rogers. As soon as you're ready, Jessica Landman, you have 3 minutes.
I'm Jessica Landman. I live 2 blocks from Maple Avenue, and that's the part of the plan I'd like to talk about. As one of the first big planning actions under Thrive Montgomery, this MMPA will be an important signal of how you plan to implement the principles of Thrive and will be closely watched. Thrive was promoted as a means of addressing past inequities and creating more options for housing that is affordable for current and future residents at all income levels. It notably targeted neighborhoods with exclusively single-family zoning to make sure that such zoning was not a barrier to future affordable housing. I support that. Yet this rezoning proposal in the Maple Avenue corridor targets not single-family housing, but an area that is already relatively densely zoned for multifamily residential buildings. And it proposes, as you know, to upzone that corridor to 150-foot high, full-on commercial development. This would put residents of a big chunk of our city's most deeply affordable rental housing at risk of significant quantities of displacement and rent increases, as you've heard. Now, this is the opposite of prioritizing racial equity, which Thrive calls for. And as you've heard, the Planning Board urged our City Council to weaken our Takoma Park rent stabilization rules, which would open the door to wider gentrification here. Thrive says also to concentrate intensive development within a half-mile of Metro or Purple Line stations or on major transportation corridors where there is a robust transit service in place, close to existing concentrations of jobs, services, and infrastructure. I'm quoting now from Thrive. The Maple Avenue corridor meets none of those criteria, and in fact, the county just announced reduced bus service along Maple Avenue, which is a very narrow little street, as you know, and you can weave in and out among the cars along Maple Avenue on your way to the metro station. Now, Thrive met resistance initially from some because it was seen as threatening the sanctity of single-family residential zoning. But in this case, the areas around Maple Avenue that are zoned for single-family housing remain virtually untouched. The loss of affordable housing and displacement is largely going to impact renters and condo owners in the Maple Avenue corridor. Meanwhile, single-family homeowners will experience reduced pressure to allow multifamily units or ADUs on their blocks around Maple Avenue, which I find ironic. And so in sum, I'm asking you to adhere to Thrive's stated principles of zoning for high commercial density near transit hubs and transportation corridors with transportation services, jobs, and infrastructure, and not in a residential neighborhood like the Maple Avenue corridor, and to protect existing affordable housing. And this MMPA modification proposal for Maple Avenue does neither of those things. You need to recognize a unicorn when you see it. Takoma Park is a unicorn. It has a unique pocket of very dense, deeply affordable, rent-stabilized housing in the Maple Avenue corridor, which is already consistent with the principles of Thrive, and it needs to be preserved and not undermined. That's what I'm asking you to please not spoil. Please don't repeat the age-old injustice of placing unwanted development in a poor neighborhood. The renters may not vote in large numbers, but they still deserve our protection. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marty Short.
Hello. This Takoma Park master plan indeed does make recommendations to improve quality of life, guide future development, and encourage improvements to the natural and built environments. These recommendations have been to some extent informed by extensive community engagement efforts, but I believe that additional community engagement is needed in order to pass this as it is. I'm encouraged by reading this master plan that it begins to explore the historically African American area known as the Hill. However, I'm discouraged by the encroachment of the private single-family houses, 2 or 3 times the size of the typical Hill resident. This addition has an adverse impact on the built environment on the Hill, and it does not allow for a full understanding of this culturally significant area. I'm happy to be in Takoma Park, and it has been socially, I like it, as everybody says, it's socially and economically diverse population, is unique. I applaud the TPMMA because it strives to preserve the city's unique characteristics, along with its values to enhance the quality of life and create new opportunities. The plan area needs affordable housing, especially at Adventist campus. I agree with that. However, As pointed out in the Montgomery County Planning Climate Assessment for the TP-MMPA issued last week, if the plan is adopted as proposed, the full build-out, this model projects an overall increase in greenhouse gas emissions of approximately 78% by 2045. And I do think that's a fairly significant fact to think about. It's not reaching the Montgomery County goals. So what do you do about that? Well, you don't build as much. That's what you do. It's a simple idea. So instead of building 7-story buildings that rise to 120 stories at the Adventist Hospital, I would suggest that that be reduced to match the existing scale that is already there, that's established by the church, Richards Hall, the building next to Richards Hall in Wilkinson. Those are great, wonderfully scaled buildings. They're appropriate to the scale of Takoma Park, and they're set back from Flower Avenue a great deal. And on a 120-foot tower in that area, I think would be adverse. The one other thing that I wanted to talk about with this is, I'm out. I'm sorry.
Thank you for your testimony. Our next speaker is Giuseppe Cimino.
Hi, good evening. My name is Giuseppe Cimino. I'm on Hilltop Road. I am around the corner from Maple Avenue, and I'm across Hilltop from Sligo Creek. My comments are very specific to one parcel in the plan, which is rezone site number 19 on Maple Avenue. This is existing R30. It's, I think, 3 stories tall. And yet the plan for Maple Avenue has the entire corridor being rezoned to a potential height of 150 feet. This kind of lines with some of the existing, I think, 12-story buildings that are there. But then here we have these 3-story buildings that are literally across the street from the creek and across the Maple Avenue from a lovely green space that are also being proposed to raise to 150 feet. In one of the drafts, the May 2023 working draft on page 47, there was a suggestion that it be zoned for a height of 65 feet, which, you know, allows for some additional development capability, but I think is much more appropriate to being to the location adjacent to both green space, the park, and then also providing a transition to the neighboring residential single-family properties. To me, that has always been, I thought, a tenet of the county's planning, is to have transitions and buffers, and certainly that was noted with regards to some of the proposed zoning up towards the hospital parcel. So anyway, that's just one specific thing that I don't quite understand and would appreciate to see done. And I've put in comments to this in the record before, as well as spoke before. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have your written testimony in the record. We appreciate it. Susan Rogers.
Good evening. Hello, County Council members, my neighbors, and other attendees. My name is Susan Rogers, and I've lived in Takoma Park for approximately 10 years, both as a renter and a homeowner on Lincoln Avenue. I'm here today to speak against the minor master plan amendment. Why did I move to Takoma Park? As a person whose passion in social justice work centers around equity for all people, I have carried out much of this work as an active member of the Montgomery County Democratic Socialists of America and also a member of the DC Labor Chorus. I gave much consideration 10 years ago as to where I would live. It was extremely important to me that I not only live in a place that was racially diverse, but include a stronghold of the working class. After considerable research on Takoma Park, I determined this was the ideal place for me. I consider affordable housing to be the biggest problem in our country today, and I am proud to know that Takoma Park was the first location in our county to pass rent stabilization. I've worked over the last year with DSA and other partners to go door to door, organizing tenants in Montgomery County to pass one of the most progressive rent stabilization laws in our county and our country. And I do want to give a shout out to Will Giuando and Kristen Mink for championing renters so well in our county. I strongly believe the Takoma Park Master Plan is a major move backward for our city, and you've already heard these three issues, but I'll emphasize them again. Upzoning. While it may be necessary on the former hospital site, it should not take place on Maple Avenue with the existing high density of multifamily housing. Upzoning will increase land values. It does not benefit renters, but pressures owners to sell or tear down buildings and displace current renters. Moreover, buildings that are torn down and rebuilt would not have to conform with rent stabilization for 5 years under the city code and are only required to have 12.5% affordable housing. The issue of equity. The resulting displacement of tenants, primarily people of color, does not conform to the city or county's commitment to equity and preserving affordable housing. Neither the city or county requires an equity analysis before proceeding with the plan amendment. While the county's planning staff promised in December that the County Office of Legislative Oversight would produce an equity analysis, the City and County Planning Board approved the plan without such analysis, and I do consider that shameful. Poor outreach to residents on Maple. Limited outreach with renters on Maple happened during the height of the pandemic, so the most impacted people were not able to provide input on this plan. Considering that these tenants have so much to lose, including the loss of open green spaces, parking, and an actual affordable place to live, this is a flaw that is perhaps the most egregious of the plan. This plan should be stopped in its tracks, and more robust outreach plans should be designed and implemented. I think I only heard 2 people at these testimonies so far who are renters on Maple Avenue. That's telling me that we have not reached out enough to them, because I'm sure they have a lot to say. I'll end with that.
Thank you for your testimony. We have 2 additional in-person speakers, Roger Schlegel and Randy Gibson, and then 2 virtual speakers, Mike English and Sheila Somashaker. We'll start with the 2 in-person speakers. Roger Schlegel, when you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, council members. I'm Roger Schlegel, a 22-year Takoma Park resident with 2 children in MCPS. I teach a high school course where students explore how human culture must evolve to harmonize with Earth's ecosystem. Many of these young people will witness the world 76 years from now in 2100. Students reach consensus in this course very early in the year around 2 basic conclusions. Number 1, economic growth on its own is not a viable path to human and ecological well-being. To paraphrase Bill McKibben, we can no longer have both more and better. We have to choose. And number 2, the path to a lasting better for people is the same as the path to a lasting better for our ecosystem. How do these conclusions apply to the plan you're considering? The MMPA draft, at its core, is about a traditional definition of more. More developed land, more income from rental or sale, more government revenue. It's more with a dollar sign next to it. It rezones to make those parcels down the hill from here and across the 2 valleys worth much more. We know this kind of more doesn't guarantee better in terms of quality of life or equity for people or well-being for the ecosystem. So the MMPA draft also encourages all kinds of better: housing affordability, transportation and mobility, urban forest, energy generation, recreation, community gathering, wayfinding, stream restoration, a greenway. But these are mainly encouragements, not requirements, with caveats such as where feasible, as a kit of parts, incentivized, explored, and with flexible or low bars such as no net loss. On behalf of my students and my children, I ask you to send this plan back to the planning board. Tell them that you want better required and achieved early so that the path to more has to lead through better. Especially consider Maple Avenue's coexistence with Brashears Run, as Steve Whitney mentioned. No other county stream valley bears as heavy a burden of existing development. The plan should start with what Brashears Run needs, with what it can give in terms of ecological and human happiness. Then the plan should build outward to what trees need, then to what low-impact transportation in that valley needs, and so on. Then let the valley tell us how much more human living space it can provide, and then require that its beauty, walkability, sense of community, and other enticements remain available first to its existing residents and always to people in all sorts of occupations and stages of life. To summarize, this plan must guarantee, not merely encourage, the creation of the kind of wealth that's really going to matter to people 76 years from now. Wealth that's not so much about more money, wealth that's about a better connected human system and a better connection between humans and the ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Councilmember Gibson.
Thank you. Greetings, council members. My name is Randy Gibson, Takoma Park council member for Ward 3. Speaking for myself, but I'll just say that I totally support my mayor's 4 actions that she requested. In November's council meeting, I voted against the draft minor master plan. I'm asking you also to vote against the plan or delay it for further study. A more targeted and equitable plan with zoning tailored to limit adverse impacts should be the goal. My critique of the plan stems from the intensive scale of its upzoning, with potential negative impacts on equity, traffic, and the environment. Proposed Maple Avenue zoning includes significant increases in height, floor area ratio, and 100% commercial uses. This is an already densely populated area, home to a high proportion of low-income immigrants, elderly, and minorities. It is safe and affordable thanks to Takoma Park's rent stabilization. The scale of upzoning threatens this area by increasing property values, the likelihood of market-driven buyouts, and the potential displacement of current renters. Why is this dense neighborhood in no proximity to a transit station target to bear a disproportionate share of new development? A planning board promised equity report never materialized. To make an informed decision, I ask you to require an equity analysis. The planning board's traffic statement found, quote, transportation infrastructure in this policy area to be adequate for the density recommended in the Silver Spring plan. This completely ignores the localized impacts of potentially 3,500 more residents and their vehicles. Impacts would be felt at the intersection of East-West Highway and Maple, Carroll and Flower Avenues, Sligo Creek Parkway, among others. These 2-lane streets may have already reached their carrying capacity. Clearly, local transportation infrastructure impacts could be disruptive and costly. Please require a localized traffic study. A climate assessment was only recently released. Please consider additional time for a third-party review. Takoma Park is a leader in climate issues, and the absence of a climate assessment was one reason for my previous no vote. Regarding the assessment, I quote from Takoma Park resident and environmental scientist Paul Kwastowski, quote, it is not hard to see that even with the somewhat rosy assumptions, like assuming construction will not release greenhouse gases, this assessment predicts 78% increase in greenhouse gas emissions over the project lifetime, unquote. While recommending additional review time, I would also ask if the assessment include data on current conditions in the policy area that aren't included. The city council concerns included no net loss of affordable housing, displacement, traffic, and environmental impacts, none of which has been adequately addressed. I ask you to reject the current plan or require an equity analysis, a localized traffic study, and a third-party review of the environmental assessment. I'm asking for your due diligence. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. We are complete with our in-person testimony. We have 2 virtual, starting with Mike English. You're muted, Mike. Mr. English, you're muted.
I'm so sorry, I can't be here today. I'm sick.
You'd like to be here in person, but it's
Together, can you hear me? Oh, the clock is not. Yep.
I think we can hear you.
tonight, and they took that as proof that there was not outreach done to those communities. And that, I think, speaks to a bias as to what is and isn't outreach and what we do and don't notice. Like, for example, I don't think it would be appropriate for me to say what I did here as part of these efforts, one way or the other, to make my point, so I'm not going to do that. But there were canvassing efforts done, contracts through Everyday Canvassing, which is a local org here, to reach people on Maple Avenue. I know that because I volunteered and went door to door in buildings talking to renters about this plan and getting their input to put it in. Just because you didn't hear about it does not mean that outreach was not done. And that outreach is frankly a lot more representative of the population than the people included testified tonight, myself included. Beyond that, the concerns about affordable housing, loss of affordable housing, that look, all things equal, it's better to develop where there's not already housing. I actually think this plan does a pretty good job of ensuring that the affordable housing in place will not be threatened by it. But I do take those concerns seriously. And I understand that some are frustrated that this is not touch other parts of Takoma Park, and like to some degree I agree, but that's not really a reason to not do needed zoning in this plan scope. It's a reason to say that those other areas need to change as well. Just, I don't know, to wrap up a bit, there are, this is the first I've heard of an equity analysis being promised and not done. I don't want to dismiss specific concerns with that regard, but most of these things that come up, the traffic, the school capacity, if it's a dense neighborhood, people say, well, it's already dense enough. If it's a single-family neighborhood, people say, well, build it where it's already dense. There's always going to be an excuse. And frankly, to be blunt, this is not anything I haven't heard in every other hearing before. Thrive was delayed by a year for additional outreach, and those outreach concerns are still there. I think people's criticisms are made earnestly and are not cynical, but I am skeptical that they will be satisfied by any action taken to respond to them, to be blunt. So take them in consideration, do what needs to be done, but none of this is new. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Our final speaker. Our final speaker this evening is virtual Sheila Somashaker.
Thank you for providing the opportunity to participate at today's hearing. My name is Sheila Somashaker, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Purple Line Corridor Coalition, or PLCC, a collaborative that is working on equitable development along the Purple Line route. With its home at the University of Maryland's National Center for Smart Growth, PLCC has developed a number of research-supported plans and policy priorities that address affordable housing, small business, and other related equitable development issues. Today, we offer support for and suggestions relating to the Takoma Park Minor Master Plan Amendment to achieve shared goals in areas that fall within 1 mile of the Purple Line. We believe these recommendations are grounded in research and also fully consistent with the existing county and state plans. We support adoption of the amendment as essential to the quality of life and opportunity for current and future residents, small business owners, future Purple Line riders, and other community members. We also offer recommendations that address the small business and affordable housing elements of the plan. We support the inclusion of provisions for small or culturally relevant businesses, for example, on Maple and Erie, where businesses are much smaller than is typically envisioned in master plans. We support the plan's use of zoning to support new, small format square footage spaces for future smaller businesses. We also recommend identifying the conditions needed to support existing and new small businesses and locations where mixed-use development can mutually sustain communities and residents. We support the prioritization of no net loss of affordable homes in the planning board draft, and we recommend stronger and more specific provisions to serve the diverse housing needs of current and future residents, as well as a clearer understanding of and preservation plans for properties already serving residents in these areas. The amendment is an opportunity to produce much needed new homes and create proactive strategies for preservation of aging, unsubsidized, affordable rental homes in the plan area that now have no affordability requirements if redeveloped. We support the inclusion of new details in the planning board draft on how no net loss will be achieved through requirements such as right to return. However, we recommend greater clarity on how such policies will be designed to serve existing residents. We also recommend stronger provisions for how no net loss will serve a diverse range of community members, for example, through one-to-one replacement at various affordability levels and by housing tenure. Again, we support adoption of the amendment with inclusion of these additions, and thank you for the opportunity to present these views.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Before we close out, let me turn it to the District Council Member, Vice President Stewart.
Thank you, Council President Friedson. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who was able to come out this evening. Particularly thank you to Mayor Circe for being here. And I just want to acknowledge, we saw Council Member Gibson was here, but also I saw Council Member Fulcher, Hosniak, and Dabala also attended. And I know the City Council, the staff in the city did a great deal of work on this. I'm thankful for all the residents who came out today, and I'm looking forward to the process that will take now on the County Council. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vice President Stewart. I have a request from Councilmember Joando to speak.
Thank you. I'll be very quick. Just wanted to also thank everyone and just ask for a quick moment of silence. I found out this week, and I wanted to do it before the week closed, that we lost a kindergartner at Cannon Road Elementary to COVID in that community. Principal Donahue, it was my kid's school for 10 years. It was our home school. And it's just a reminder that life is precious, and COVID and RSV and flu are still out there. And I just wanted to ask for a moment of silence for that kindergartner, that family, and that community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Joando. As a matter of housekeeping, the Planning, Housing, and Parks will be taking up this minor master plan amendment on January 29th. That'll be an overview, and we'll begin with the policy-wide recommendations at that meeting. There'll be 2 other meetings subsequent to that, and we look forward to your active participation as we would expect moving forward. As noted, you can continue to reach out to the council to share your thoughts and feedback. Really want to appreciate, again, as you heard from Vice President Stewart, everybody's participation here tonight. Glad we were able to do it in the community to make this as accessible a process as possible and also allow for virtual testimony as well. And with that, colleagues, and with appreciation, everybody who came out tonight, we are adjourned. This public hearing is now closed.